Welcome to Around the Empire. I'm your host, Joanne Leon. Co-hosting today is Kelly Lane. This is a fully independent podcast funded only by the support of listeners and viewers. And it's not an echo chamber, so you'll find all different kinds of views here, including many that I don't always agree with on a lot of things, but can almost always find some common ground with. And I think that it's more important than ever right now to hear different views. Visit the website aroundtheempire.com to find out how to support this podcast and gain access to bonus content. Today we have a special panel episode hosted by myself and Kelly Lane, and the guests that we have today are Shannon Bray, Matthew Ho, Scott Horton, and Angela McArdle. It's a panel discussion about the importance of third-party candidates, especially anti-interventionist candidates who can act as a political insurgency to disrupt the establishment status quo. We also discuss the recent scandal with the North Carolina Election Board voting along partisan lines to prevent U.S. Senate candidate Matthew Ho from getting on the ballot, and the lawsuits that have followed that and the up-to-the-minute news on that issue. We also talk about the recent takeover of the Libertarian Party by the Mises Caucus. And lastly, the need to find common ground among anti-interventionists across the political spectrum. Shannon Bray is running for U.S. Senate in North Carolina on the Libertarian Party ticket. Matthew Ho is running for U.S. Senate in North Carolina on the Green Party ticket. Scott Horton is an author and director of the Libertarian Institute and the editorial director of antiwar.com. Angela McArdle is the recently elected chair of the Libertarian National Party. We recorded this on July 27th, 2022. Welcome to Around the Empire. We have a great panel today. Kelly Lane and I are co-hosting, and we have Kelly, we have Shannon Bray, the Libertarian candidate for Senate in North Carolina. I'm here, obviously. We have Matthew Ho, the Green Party candidate for Senate in North Carolina. We have Scott Horton. Scott has, which is it? The editor of antiwar.com, author of several books, including a new one, head of the Libertarian Institute, and also an important member of the Libertarian Party. And we have Angela McArdle, who is the new chair of the National Libertarian Party. And I'm just going to ask you guys to just do a quick intro, because this is both an audio and a video show. And with all these voices, I want people to be able to identify who's who. So if you just go clockwise. I'll start with Shannon, or Kelly, you should start.
Okay. Hi, I'm Kelly Lane. Thank you, Joanne, for having me on to co-host. I am currently the editor and co-producer of Assange Countdown to Freedom with Randy Credico. Prior to that, I worked on two candidate organizations, kind of grassroots candidates. So I am so excited to have this opportunity to have the Libertarian candidate and the Green Party candidate in one form. I think these are the conversations that aren't being had. So I'm just excited to bring this panel together.
My name is Dennis Gray. I'm the candidate for the U.S. Senate for North Carolina as the Libertarian candidate. I come from a DOD background. I am an anti-war combat vet, and I'm a huge advocate for cryptocurrency.
I'm Joanne Leon. I'm your host. Matt, you want to give a quick intro?
Sure. I'm Matt Ho, running for U.S. Senate in North Carolina with the Green Party. Like Shannon, I'm a anti-war combat vet. It's interesting that the four candidates in this race for Senate, the two combat vets are the two ones who are anti-war. I think that tells a lot about our current circumstances.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. I'm Scott Horton. I'm the editorial director of antiwar.com, and I do the Scott Horton Show, which is basically foreign policy stuff.
And my name is Angela McArdle. I am the newly elected chair of the National Libertarian Party.
Yay.
Congratulations, Angela.
Thank you.
Wait, do I have it right that Matthew and Shannon, you guys are running against each other for the same seat here?
We are, yeah.
All right, good. So what can we do to set up a thing where it's the two of you versus the other two?
It all comes down to visibility, right? Funding, visibility, raising money. And I've listened to Matthew. I prefer him over the other two anyway. So it's like we
same,
agree.
Shannon. Absolutely the same. Yeah.
So it's and every time I see that he's not even mentioned in so many things, I kind of tag him just to give him some awareness of things. But with what we've done in the state, what they've done in the state against his party, though, is just absurd. Nobody even knows that it's going on, and they're talking about how it's democracy and how the Democrats and the Republicans are, one's good and one's evil. They're all part of that evil empire. So just to work it into the show, I guess.
Yeah.
And like our focus today is, I'm sorry, go ahead, Matt.
I'm just very appreciative of the support we've gotten from the Libertarian Party. It comes back to this idea that I've known Scott for 12 years, and we kid each other about our political and economic philosophy differences. But the reality is that like I know Scott and I know Shannon and Angela and everyone else on the Libertarian side, as opposed to like our socialist side. You arrived at what you believe in because of your life experiences. Like it comes from your heart, it comes from your mind, it comes from your soul, it comes from your principles, which is stark contrast to the two people that Shannon and I are running against in the Democratic and Republican Party, who are not campaigning on principle or values or beliefs, but upon transactions and what's expedient.
Right. And we know that more and more of this country is not identifying with either Democrat or Republican. I believe it was in February, the Independent Voter Network had some research, some polling, and said 50% of people now are identifying as unaffiliated. So why don't you guys have the airtime? Why is it so, underground? And I think you have to kind of join forces up against the two big parties to support each other and get these kinds of conversations in front of people. People are tired of hearing just campaign slogans, and they want real conversations, like real debates on healthcare and that kind of thing. But obviously, being anti-war is probably the number one thing where we agree, or the Green and Libertarians agree.
Yeah, that's our common ground here. I mean, this is a war foreign policy podcast, so that's the common theme that we all have. But we also want to talk about independent parties, how important they are. Like Kelly was saying, more and more people are unaffiliated, and I would say I haven't seen poll numbers on this recently, but I would say there's a super majority of people who at least think we need more options, that are at least disappointed. I'm just being kind here with the establishment parties. So that's our common theme here, and sort of the things that we want to talk about. And just the fact that they're Libertarian Party showing solidarity with the Green Party candidate here. I mean, that's fantastic. And common ground, I know I'm a broken record here, but it's just so important because there's a lot of common ground, and we got to find it.
Well, in addition to those unaffiliated that are on record, we have, even in 2020, which was supposedly the largest turnout ever, we still had 80 million people that didn't vote. Now, when I interviewed these small grassroots candidates back in 2018, I mean, they were getting so much good feedback from their communities, but like a lot of them were Democrats, and then like the DCCC would come in and do whatever they could to shut down what they were doing. But they were really resonating with people. When you ask people that don't vote, why don't you vote? They say, because I don't think it matters. It doesn't make any difference. And the candidates aren't speaking to my concerns. But I think we have to count that in too. I mean, 50% unaffiliated plus 80 million people that don't vote. I think this lie that a third party candidate can't win, I think it's just that it's a myth. I think it is possible.
The problem is that because they feel like they're wasting their vote, right? And they understand that they're not wasting their vote, and every vote that we actually get counts for something, whether it's media time, debate time, or whether we get invited to things. Every vote counts. And you can argue the same thing in Texas, right? If you're a Democrat, there's a good chance that your votes are going to be thrown away because it's heavily Republican, or where Angela lives. If it's really hard to get a Republican in place over there, right? Because it's just thrown away. there's power in voting, and people are giving up that power by being silent, and it's really tough to reach them because they don't understand how important it is.
Well, Angela, I was wondering if you might want to talk about, I didn't find the talk that you did at Freedom Fest, but I saw your tweet that you were going to be talking about using insurgency techniques to win politically when you're in the minority.
If we could just do, Scott has a really short on time, so if we could just let Scott talk about, another really important aspect of all of this, and that was changing one of the third parties to be more, in my view, more in line with more people. And Scott, if you would, can you sort of tell us the story about what happened with the Libertarian Party this year?
Sure. Well, in the past, the Libertarian Party's been run by very good people, but there is kind of a thing where the people who are better at, bureaucratic, networking and institution building aren't necessarily the most ideological people or the people who really understand even what's going on in the world the best all the time. So there's been kind of a big disconnect between what the libertarian movement is about and what the Libertarian Party is about. And it's been like that my whole life, really. I mean, Harry Brown was a great candidate, but the LP itself, I mean, they nominated Andre Maru and all these boobs. So what's happened now is you've essentially had the Libertarian movement take over the Libertarian Party, because on one hand, you had sort of these milquetoast kind of, geez, we should have a flat tax kind of, half an argument on one side. And then you had sort of these woke people coming and saying, libertarianism comes down to transgender agendas and whatever kind of crap. That is not what we're about at all. So the libertarians, well, and not only that, but calling everybody else a racist over whatever. So we just decided that enough of us at once would join and overthrow the old leadership and put libertarian movement members in charge of the party itself, and which is just fantastic. I mean, the thing is, we're so focused on winning, and like, how can we win and how can we make sure we don't lose? That would suck. And we got to get this thing and make sure. But not only did we elect Angela chair with 70% of the vote, but we also took over every single position on the Libertarian National Committee, all the regionals and at-larges and judiciary committees and all of these things, because everybody agreed with us. It wasn't just the majority we brought. It was the super majority, because we got, the rank and file, most of the rank and file of the LP were with us and wanted to see this happen. And so now the sky is absolutely the limit. Now we have this organization that has, 20, 30,000 members of it, and that we can use for all different kinds of purposes and sticking up for all different kinds of people, whether it's, foreign policy, or whether it's victims of drug wars or gun wars, or, obviously on economics. The libertarians are the only ones who understand and can explain why the economy booms and busts the way it does. I mean, the world needs us on that, and we're the best, and we're right in the middle of a major crisis along those lines. And so, one of the reasons I'm in a hurry is because I got to run a couple errands before I run down and do the Kennedy show tonight, where the topic is central banking and war and central banking. That's what we care about. We're the Ron Paul revolution, and we don't want to sit here and talk about, whatever kind of diversions, things that don't matter. We're here because America's in a crisis, and we're trying to solve the very worst things that our government is doing first and most, like debasing the currency and bailing out billionaires and bombing Yemenis to death. And this kind of, and Ukraine, getting Ukrainians killed too. This is the stuff that's at the top of our agenda. And as we do a good job of doing what it is that we mean to do, that is what's going to drive recruitment and drive a whole new libertarian moment and a whole new libertarian phenomenon, which is going on now. And it's interesting because we have a ton of people who are leaving the Republican Party because they're sort of never Trumper liberal Republican types. Some of them may be trying to come our way. And I think the old party would have said, right this way, Liz Cheney, and, come in here with your money. But our thing is, no. If the rank and file of kind of liberal Republican rhino types, if they want to understand and adopt libertarianism and become libertarians, that's great. We want everyone, but on our terms. What we hate is central banking and war. We're not right wingers. We have our own agenda, and we're not liberal Republicans either. Lincoln Chafee is a very nice liberal Republican, not the horrible kind like, say, John McCain or something, but, Lincoln Chafee, very nice guy. Decent on gay rights and on legalizing pot, but he wasn't for legalizing hard drugs, and he wasn't for legalizing business, and he wasn't for legalizing guns. And that was because he's not a libertarian. He's like a Rockefeller Republican. He's a liberal Republican. And because he agrees with us on war and gay rights, he thought maybe he was a libertarian, but he didn't know what that was. And then the old Libertarian Party was happy to welcome people like him in and say, hey, libertarianism is whatever you say it is if you can get us on TV or whatever. Well, that's not what we're doing now. And I think that, you know, the old party would say that this is self-limiting, that we're just going to be so rigid and ideological that we limit ourselves. But I think that they were so non-ideological and so soft and wavering that they couldn't attract anyone at all. And we saw what happened when Ron Paul just said, enough of this. We want out of the wars, and we want to abolish the central bank, and we want to be free. And what happened was he converted millions of people, tens of millions of people, to libertarianism overnight in the Ron Paul revolution, especially of 08, but also in 12. And so that's what's at stake, right? America is all effed up, and the libertarians are the ones who know how to fix it. And so that's it. And so we're going to lead with the hardcore messaging on tackling the worst problems first. And people are going to agree with us because we're right. And we're going to show them we're right. And just like on the Kennedy show, and I'm not patting myself on the back, it's Spike Cohen and Jeff Deist and Dave Smith and anyone who ever goes on the Kennedy show. You watch, there's a Republican in a box and a Democrat in a box, and then us, and we kill it every time. They got their little talking points. We got wisdom. We got understanding. We got, remember the crash of 1999? Well, here's what happened then, and here's why now is different, and blah, blah, blah. In a way, they just can't talk that way because they don't know. They don't know nothing, but we do. And so that's the new Libertarian Party. Just look at the Libertarian Party Twitter account. Every single day, it's just talking like a libertarian would. Not being, edge lords and blah, blah, like make it, a disgrace out of us, which is what the old pragmatists were afraid of. But instead, they make us look good because they're being courageous and they're speaking the truth to people who deserve to be shouted down. And so, you talk about those 80 million something people who don't vote. Well, why not? Because they don't think for a minute that the Republicans or Democrats care about them at all, represent their interests at all. But we do. We represent everyone except probably even the richest of billionaires. We probably even represent the lower class billionaires. But we represent everybody from the poor in the Salvation Army bunks all the way up to the multimillionaires here in the entire society, town and country, left and right, black and white, and right and left, working people and business owners too. It's not supposed to be this way. This is not how America's supposed to be. And everybody knows that. But everybody has a hard time putting their finger on why are we on the wrong track? What is it about this track that's wrong? Well, we're the ones who got our act together. We're going to start with central banking and war. That's the worst thing about our society, and then we're going to work from there. And that's going to get it done. And we're just getting started now. So anybody interested in all this, by all means, join the Libertarian Party and join what we're doing. It's only just begun. And you spend the rest of this time, listening to Angela, who is absolutely great, and her vision for the future of this party too. And what we certainly will be able to accomplish. And this is something that's important for the Green Party too, is something that we have in mind is the most kind of brutal extortion. And I don't think that we got to be, I thought for a while, and people have warned me, we better be coy about how we do that. But I don't think so, because I think extortion is the answer to the age-old question. Why should I vote for you guys if I know you can't win? It's a 51% winner-take-all system. Right now, the polls say it's 47 to 44 between the Republican and the Democrat. Why would I vote for you? And our answer is like, gee, well, someday if everybody did, it would be great or something. No, that's not a good enough answer. What's a good enough answer for this election right now is because if you vote for us, then we're going to, and the Democrat wins, or vice versa, depending on the situation, then we are going to be able to credibly tell them that we're the reason you lost. And you're right to be mad at us and afraid of us. And we're going to do it again. And we're going to do it even harder next time unless you give in on the following three things. And we have to give them an out. It can't be they have to become perfect and pure tomorrow. But it has to be you're going to fulfill our demands on the following three things. And then, hey, we might not run against you at all next time. In fact, we might run, but to the left of the Democrat next time instead of to the right of the Republican. But we are going to use and abuse Republicans with the margin that we do have. And we're going to give them a reason to think that, you know what, actually, I could probably just clean up on this and this, and they'd leave me alone, and make it worth their while to back off on the things that they're worst on. And, and that goes for state, local, and federal level and all different issues. And it's not all, Scott Horton's agenda. It's whatever is worst in your community and in your state that's got to get tackled. And then just make them regret it, and a lot of this stuff is easy too. People in jail for victimless crimes, people in jail for failing to appear over a summons, over a ticket, over an offense where there's no victim. It's simply like a tax stamp was out of date or some kind of thing. And this kind of harassment of Americans is what makes people hate and fear the cops and hate living here under this kind of regime. So there's all kinds of things that we can do to just say, listen, you know how you're neck and neck with this guy? Well, we can either spend the next 8 weeks barbecuing the hell out of you and making sure he wins, or you can give in to our following demands right now. And I think this works best on incumbents who already are in the seat and have the ability to do things. We don't want promises. We want action, right? But if you do the things that we say, then we will live up to our promise, and we're not going to come for you the next time or whatever. Things like that, where we're creative enough. And I'm not saying sell out and compromise. I'm saying be hardcore on principle, but be creative in how we can use this party to affect change in the short term.
Angela should jump in.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I got to go. I'm way over time. You know how I do. I love you guys. Bye. Thanks.
Thanks, Scott.
See you, Scott.
Angela, I watched from the sidelines as you guys were going state by state and just taking over the party and changing things. And it was really something to watch.
Yeah, it took a lot of work. It took a lot of organization and really understanding our role in the Libertarian Party and what we could do to make changes and how we could affect change. And I think there's some really good lessons in how the Mises Caucus took over the Libertarian Party for libertarians who are running for office and trying to affect political change. And I think that the same thing goes for the Green Party. And Kelly touched on it earlier, and it really comes down to insurgency tactics. So this is interesting, right? It's an interesting paradox here. War is awful. We obviously oppose it. One of the things that Scott and I are both really passionate about right now is trying to raise awareness about this bipartisan war powers resolution that's before Congress right now. I believe it's HJ 87 is what it's called. And anybody listening, I think the number is 1-888-STOP-WAR. If you call that number, it's like a switchboard. They'll connect you with your representative and you can tell them, hey, I support this bill, please vote yes on it. It's really about pulling us out of any counterinsurgency operations or any type of support that the United States is giving to the war in Yemen. So killing our intelligence, logistical and personnel support, just getting rid of it. There's so much more than just putting troops on the ground when it comes to U.S. military involvement. We're giving people financial aid. We're kind of training other militaries. Oh, this is how you go and, murder lots of innocent people, giving them logistical support. Like, oh, we'll help, fix your vehicles. We'll give you stuff. That's all got to end. But anyway, the insurgency tactics are something that we can actually take a lesson from when it comes to U.S. military intelligence gathering, because what we've seen is, by and large, like the United States military doesn't know how to deal with insurgents, and they've written so many papers on it. And you guys who are combat vets, you're probably going to know more about it than I am. Like, I've read a whole lot about it, but I have not been, I'm not an active duty person. But I think it's important for us to adopt an insurgency mindset. And an insurgency is basically a small group of people who adopt guerrilla warfare tactics in opposition to authority. And I think a lot of those tactics can be adopted in a nonviolent manner for what I basically call political warfare. It's asymmetrical warfare, right? Like, we're in the minority politically, so we have to be more creative. And that was definitely what the Mises Caucus did, even though we weren't referring to it that way. And that was also what I talked about at Freedom Fest. And I talked about it, with how like 9 years ago, I worked in the city of LA to get rid of a potential ban on food sharing. They called it food sharing in public rights of way. What it is feeding homeless people. The city of LA wanted to make it illegal because, well, heaven forbid we try to take matters into our own hands, right? They just want to handle everything themselves. And obviously all their programs have failed abysmally. It's a disaster. And then the other way that I utilized these tactics was to get the vaccine mandates in the city of LA overturned. And it was successful both times. And we're a small group, but we got loud and we got really clever about how we did things. So that's just kind of like a little introduction into how we took over the party and how that tactic can be used in the broader political world.
I'm actually trying to follow the same thing almost to a bigger scale using crypto. Because as people get more into decentralization, they understand the power of thought then. Because then all of a sudden we start talking about the power of DAOs and the old libertarian question, who will actually make the roads? When you actually look into crypto DAOs and see how effective they are, and find out that there's 5G solutions that don't require the government, that are all coming from the crypto world. I think I'm starting to see more people understand what liberty actually means to them. And I'm hoping that it's one of those conduits that, now that the structure is set in the party, and I commend you for everything you've done, Angela, that, I really think that it is a liberty moving party now, whereas before I didn't really have a great relationship with the LP, but that was I just never felt like it was for me. But almost my whole state is Mises Caucus. So, and I think the liberty movement's growing with other things like that. But crypto to me crypto's my job, or at least on the platform, trying to get more people at least thinking outside the duopoly. And I already know I'm successful whether or not I win at the ballot. So.
I never really thought about it this way before, but Matt, when the news first came out about the election board preventing you from, that vote they took, preventing you from getting on the ballot, it wasn't long before I was DMing you on Twitter. And I suspect that based on what I've seen over the last several weeks, you've been on every podcast and YouTube stream I could think of. So I suspect that I was one of a wave of people who rallied around you. So in a sense, Angela, we are using and asymmetric warfare tactics. And that's pretty interesting, given that we're all sort of anti-interventionists. But
right. But we've learned basically from the failed war on terror, we've actually learned what to do. We've learned how to successfully fight off giant governments because we've seen other people do it. And obviously, we're not using guns and hurting people, but we've kind of figured out, some of the basics. You've got to delegitimize authority in the eyes of the local community. You've got to endear yourselves to the local community, make them like you. So, for libertarians, that means that you can't walk into every local event with a thick copy of Man, Economy, and State and start, waxing poetic about stuff that no one cares about. You've got to really meet people where they're at. And you've got to learn who's respected in the community. What do people care about? And you got to work that angle. And, during lockdowns, I was really insistent that we operate black markets and we provide a way for people to maintain employment, and especially for single moms and women and people who are providing for children. If a woman's cutting hair, she's got a nail salon, you need to make that a top priority to hit those people up, because that looks obviously it's the right thing to do, but it also looks really good in the eyes of the community, and it humanizes us and it humanizes our resistance movement. And when you have candidates sort of coalesce around that strategy and do the same thing and point out, obviously, like it even like all across the board ideologically, I know that libertarians and Green Party candidates are going to agree that, you know, pointing out basic political corruption is something that we can all get on board with. And you expose these people as criminals and kind of destroy their association with the rule of law. That also like really puts you up there because these people love to wield the law at us. You know, like you see Joe Biden, he and Kamala Harris before were championing defund the police with BLM, and now they're doing nothing but tweeting about support the police. Like it just you can kind of point out their hypocrisy and like what a joke it is, make them totally illegitimate looking.
Yeah, and you know, talk about this machine and the corrupt machine, more corrupt by the day. Matt is up against that machine, the Democratic Party part of it. I would say it's the establishment, though.
Yeah.
So much so that they not only prevented him from getting on the ballot for a bogus reason, but they also sent the biggest guns that the Democratic Party has, their legal lawfare people, and that's who they put up against him. Kelly, I know you had some things to say too, but after that, Matt, for people who don't know your story yet, we'd love to hear about it, and you know what's the latest developments on that.
Yeah, I think we should hear. Let's catch up what the latest is on your lawsuit.
Sure. So, and I definitely have some thoughts about what we're talking about how we can use these insurgency tactics, affect things asymmetrically, and what I've seen just in the last few weeks, how that applies. Because you're right, they made a big mistake by not certifying us. And that gets back to their smugness and their arrogance of power. Something that was completely the United States is undoing in Iraq and Afghanistan was our smugness, our arrogance of power. And that was used very effectively against the United States. And we're able to do that here. But for people who aren't familiar with our situation here, we had to get on the ballot in North Carolina as a political party. So we had to collect signatures. We needed 13,583 or whatever it was. And we collected more than 22,500 signatures. And of those, almost 16,000 were verified by the county boards of elections. We met all our deadlines, turned in everything correctly, did all the procedures right. And still, when the state board of elections met to certify us, they chose not to certify us along partisan lines. The board of the state board of elections is 3 Democrats and 2 Republicans, and they voted 3 against 2. And the argument simply was that because there are irregularities, in which there's always irregularities in petitioning. Nationwide, it's about a 75% verification rate on a petition drive. For every 4 signatures you collect, 3 are going to count. 1's going to get tossed out. That's just the nature of it. People write the wrong address down. They think they're registered or not registered. There's nothing nefarious about it. And we were within that band. But the state board of elections says that because there were these irregularities, of which they've never shown us evidence, allowed us to due process to, defend ourselves or examine any of this or have a say, because there are these irregularities, there could be more issues. And because there could be more issues, we're not going to certify you. And, almost 2 months after we've turned in our signatures, we still have not received any legal justification from the state board of elections as to why we have not been certified. Again, no evidence shown to us, no due process. The nearly 16,000 verified signatures we have, which is almost 2,100 more signatures than we needed. Nothing has ever been demonstrated by the state board of elections to show that any of those signatures are in doubt. What they are doing is they're pointing to signatures that were never verified in the first place and saying, because there's these, there could be more, which, basically what this comes down to is an argument that the political party in power has the right to decide who their opponents are based upon their whim. They don't need to provide evidence. They don't need to provide due process, and they don't need to provide legal justification. And what we're up against, so people can understand that kind of the larger thing here, is there's the ballot printing deadline of August 15th.
Yeah.
And that in North Carolina is not unique. This has happened across the country to independents, grassroots campaigns, third parties across the country. I mean, there are myriad examples of this where all the resources that the establishment has is thrown against these minor parties, these grassroots candidates, in order to exhaust them, in order to deny them, to delay them to the point where they're no longer able to run, or they just run out of time, or they run out of money. And so this is the well-horned playbook. But getting back to this idea of doing things asymmetrically, knowing that, to run headlong into them. Like, we didn't see, that's not how the Iraqis and the Afghans fought us. The Iraqis might have fought us that way the first year of the war, but after that, they never did. And the Afghans certainly didn't. They fought the Soviets a bit that way in the 80s, but then they adjusted. You don't go running up against an opponent. If you use a David and Goliath analogy, you use a slingshot. You don't go running up and try and beat Goliath in a fist fight. And that's effectively what the Iraqis and the Afghans did that enabled them to win these wars, was that they didn't go rushing headlong into the Leviathan that was the American military and its allies. And we have to avoid doing the same thing too, rushing headlong against, because, Shannon can tell you this better than I could. In 2020, they spent $300 million on the U.S. Senate race in North Carolina. So, to run into that, you're crazy if you're going to go headlong into that. So we got to find a way to fight them asymmetrically.
Okay. They spent $500,000 on my campaign to split the Republican, they as in the Democrats, to split the Republican vote for guns. So right before all these flyers went out, talking about how Tom Tillis is going to vote to take away your guns. Now, the nice thing is since then, because everyone they told me I was a liar. The nice thing is the words that they said was actually true, because during the last vote, Tom Tillis did indeed vote for red flag laws. So I'm using that now as a campaign.
Right. So let's unpack some of this madness with is it the Department of Elections? Who is it that pulled this? What's the entity?
The state board.
The state board.
There's two. We're fighting a two-front fight here. We really are.
Okay.
There's the State Board of Elections,
okay,
and then there is the Democratic Party, the DSCC, Chuck Schumer's outfit.
But
and
they're like this, right? They
are like this, and we have
tight.
evidence. You're right, and we have evidence that there has been collusion between the governor's office, which is supposedly a nonpartisan executive agency, and the Democratic Party up in D.C. So what we have evidence of is that they worked together, particularly in early June, to get the petition records from the State Board of Elections. Because then what happened was, aside from in parallel to what the State Board of Elections did, the Democratic Party through the DSCC and look up Mark Elias. He is arguably the most prominent Democratic attorney in the country if people aren't familiar with him. And what they did was they obtained our petition records, and then they started calling people, texting people, and visiting their homes to try and get them to remove their names from the petitions. And it's worse than that, Angela, because they were calling people 5, 6, 7 times a day with an auto dialer. When people would answer, they would sometimes say they were with the DSCC. Other times they would refuse to say who they were with. And then there are times, we have this on recordings, where they said they were with the Green Party. Yeah.
Should I play the clip? It's a 1-minute clip. Should I play it?
Yeah, definitely.
I always like hearing it.
Okay. I have more questions here. Okay.
I want to confirm whether or not I signed a petition. Mass, who are you calling with? What organization? Oh, is this the Green Party?
Yes.
You're with the Green Party?
Yes, and we have you listed as wanting to get the candidates of North Carolina ballot, and you signed that.
So you were calling as a representative of the Green Party?
As a volunteer, yes.
Okay. Yeah, I did sign it.
Okay, and would you say you strongly support it or just somewhat support it?
I mean, I don't think I'd sign something unless I strongly support it.
Okay, well, thank you for confirming. Animal participation in elections is important if the Green Party is on the ballot. It will take votes away from Democrats, giving Republicans a huge advantage that will help them win North Carolina in 2022 and 2024. There's far too much at stake to let this happen. Are you interested in asking to have your name removed from this petition or leave it as is?
I'm confused. So if you're with the Green Party, why are you asking to remove Are you at? I'm sorry.
Yes, I totally.
That was insane. What on earth? Okay, have you filed an FEC complaint?
I have not filed an FEC complaint yet. I'm following our attorney's instructions on.
Your attorney needs to file an FEC. That was
Also, isn't it's ACLU? Like, I mean, this is voter intimidation.
Yeah, and there are complaints in with the State Board of Elections. What's interesting is we went out there again. We collected 22,500 signatures, and so we talked to twice as many people, right? So we talked to tens of thousands of people over the course of months as we were doing our campaign to get on the ballot, and not one complaint into any of the county boards of elections or the State Board of Elections. We don't have a complaint against us until the DSCC shows up here from DC, and then
you need to light them up.
And then but they almost immediately, almost as soon as they are here, within a week or two that they're here, they start getting complaints against them to the State Board of Elections. We have not seen anything from the State Board of Elections in terms of investigating the DSCC for obvious fraud, right? I mean, because they don't just misrepresent themselves as the Green Party. We have documentation and recordings of them saying that they're with the State Board of Elections or with the Secretary of State's office, and harassing people and bullying them and shaming them. And what we heard back from the State Board of Elections, from their executive director, was that, well, this is nothing more than canvassing. But again, she's a political appointee. It's all partisan. So our first thing is to have this lawsuit, to have the federal court certify us and place our candidates on the ballot. And then after that, we'll move forward with other actions.
Because you're so short on time.
We are.
Like, was it a declaratory relief action?
Yeah, a motion for emergency injunction, and so we're in front of the judge. We filed that. The state had a chance to file. The Democratic Party came in and made a motion to intervene and become a co-defendant, as well as. And then yesterday, of course, the Republican Party filed a brief on our behalf. You know, my attitude is F you. I don't want any. I don't want any of that. But that's just the reality of this binary two-party structure. That's what's going to happen. And so
whatever, if they're filing briefs on your behalf, as long as they don't suck, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, I think the other thing that happened, and I actually have a clip of that too, but it's probably too long. I won't play it here. But one of the Republicans on the board, Tucker, I believe it is, spoke up and said, "Okay, so you're worried about signatures here,
right?
But no signatures were checked during the 2020 election. They're very against it." And then I don't remember the details of the next thing that they had to decide on, but it was basically they just decided the reverse. Like, oh, here are the signatures don't matter.
Yeah, that was for absentee ballots.
Right. And Mark Elias.
If Shannon was the one who was in there trying to get on the ballot, the Republicans would have been making the argument against him, and the Democrats would have been supporting. I mean, the whole thing is so atrocious and so overt in its hideousness, right? Excuse me, I was going to say about the whole structure of this, though. It just comes back. It validates what we're doing. It validates what we're talking about, right? It validates why we want a multi-party democracy. Exactly. Yeah. So they are this idea that they are doing exactly, say, what the American government did in Iraq and Afghanistan, delegitimizing itself. It exposed the reality of the American empire, right? This exposes the reality of the two-party system, duopoly, whatever you want to call it.
Someone else should file a public records request. It is like a state level Freedom of Information Act. Somebody who's not a party to the litigation should jump on that, because I bet there's stuff to be obtained. I bet there is.
A number of journalists have, and we've gotten some stuff out of that. We've gotten some things out of that, because that shows that they all were talking, despite the fact that they said no, we had nothing to do with the Democratic Party, and the whole thing is nonsense anyway, because we all know that these people who are on the State Board of Elections, the 3 Democrats and 2 Republicans, they're not there because they're so passionate about democracy or they're election law experts. They might be, but their main thing is that when it comes time for something like this, they can be trusted to do the right thing for the party. That's the loyalty of it all, right?
Totally.
Can I ask a quick question, Matt? Mm-hmm. So what that clip that we were listening to, basically the establishment party was trying to get people to pull their signatures off of Matt's petition. Didn't they call the head of the Green Party or something like that? Is that who that was?
That was
That was
Tony.
him.
Because what happened was we knew this was happening because people we found out that the Elias Law Group was down here representing DSCC, and then a few days after that, or maybe a week after that, we started hearing from people that, hey, I got a phone call from someone asking me to take my name off your petition. We said, what? And then we started hearing from people, hey, you guys are calling us and saying take, and then so we have people who were, because we were all getting the phone calls. I never I was never able to connect with the phone call, but I was, going to try and record it as well. And I ended up getting a text message instead. But, and we have video of them coming to people's homes. But yeah, the recording you just heard was one of our co-chairs, Tony Ndege. So he was ready for it. And got it.
Fraud.
And,
It's just straight fraud.
It is, and the other thing that they're doing here is they're fracturing the Democratic Party itself. Today, there's a story out of Guilford County about how the Guilford County Board of Elections, because what the Democratic Party is doing, it's also bringing complaints against county boards of elections for supposedly not doing their jobs. And today, one of the counties pushed back and said publicly, there's no merit to that. We've went through this. There's absolutely nothing to support what the Democratic Party is saying. And these are all Democratic Party appointees because the Democratic Party controls the governor's office, so they can control the entire election apparatus. So they're doing a really great job of making a fracture within the North Carolina Democratic Party, as well as I've just not gotten support because this is so brazen, because it is so overt. I'm just not getting support from people outside the Democratic Party. I'm getting a lot of support from within the Democratic Party. Officers of both the national and the North Carolina Democratic Party have reached out to me and said, I'm sorry for this. This is disgusting. And also what they'll say is like, this is our undoing. We're really killing ourselves here rather than getting out there and, fighting against the Republicans and standing up for whoever. We are doing our best to quash, your little Green Party.
And unfortunately, I think, your next battle, if you do get on the ballot, is going to be the election itself. I mean, we talked about some of the election integrity groups, and they are largely, at least until 2020, they are largely entrenched with Democrats. And so that's a big problem. And I don't know if we have time to get into this, but I wanted to ask Shannon what he knew about stuff the Libertarian Party is doing to ask for the source code from, I guess it's ESNS. But they're going to fight a tooth and nail against any transparency there. So with smaller candidates. So
basically, and I think I'm not sure where it is in the process, but basically we're saying, hey, we'll do the code review. We're not part of any particular party. We're smart enough. Half the people that I know in the party are either in IT or, we can do a code review without issue. And it's basically just supposed to add, right? One. It doesn't even subtract. So it should be a pretty easy process. But we'll see. But the nice thing would be down the road is to kind of apply the same thing against, ranked choice voting on the blockchain. And then we won't have any of this. Everything will be wide open. Anybody can do it with a script, get a count. In fact, half of our problems that are big problems that we have are all solvable as soon as we get, smart people in offices.
Right. Well, there's currently another lawsuit against the Wake County Board of Elections by Lynn Bernstein. She's her group is Transparent Elections North Carolina, but she was a Democrat with the Democratic Party, Wake County, to observe. And they just have shut her out completely and ended up issuing her a trespassing citation. It's absurd, but this is the lengths they're going to. I think some of it is a backlash to the Stop the Steal, people from 2020 that really feel Trump won. And so they're reacting to that. But this is what they're going to do is try to shut down. She's going to try to observe like the poll tapes, things like that. And they're really trying to keep people out now. And in the media, now we have like the Washington Post is like bashing hand counted paper ballots. So we're watching this. It's I don't know, a knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah, this whole thing. That's so many things we've been dealing with. I don't know if there's one this bad, honestly, that I'm dealing with this election cycle, but we've been dealing with candidate challenges and all kinds of garbage in the LP in New York, the most recent one in Rhode Island, in Wisconsin. Once I was able to get in front of the boards and make an argument, they ended up taking our side, right? Because they saw how ridiculous the candidate challenges were. That's because they were coming from other candidates. This is a whole different animal because it's the board itself that is basically, abject evil, in my opinion, running you through the ringer. And then, yeah, Kelly points out on top of that, like, you got to beat this hurdle.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got to deal with fraudulent ballots. It's fascinating to watch how this is sort of evolving, because in 2016, it was Democrats saying that, Hillary won, Donald Trump cheated, and he still said, oh, like dead people voted, whatever, all these conspiracies. And then in 2020, it's, oh, Donald Trump won, who stopped the steal election. But now we're seeing, I don't know, who cheated, whatever. People cheat in every election. It depends on, no one knows if that's enough to matter. But this is clearly like a real concern.
Well, I will plug another show that I volunteer with. It's not really a show. It's smartelections.us if you're interested. And they're nonpartisan, and they do a live stream every once a month now, I think it is. But they have all kinds of experts in the field of election security and integrity to come on and talk about this. But that we're going to have to fight this and unify. And I see this as something that can be done with, a Green Party, libertarian, independent kind of joining forces. But I wish Scott were still on, because I'm hoping to maybe ask, I did a lot of reading before we came on here to try to sort of understand the real history of this accusation of a red-brown alliance. Because I think we see that anytime, especially I think on the left, that, any attempts to sort of reach across the aisle. I mean, I'll hear people, Democrats say libertarians, the usual, they're racist, they're this, they're that. And so any attempts, anytime someone influential, I will say, like Jimmy Dore has done it, writer Caitlin Johnstone, say we should reach across and talk with libertarians. We agree on anti-war efforts. We agree on, election security things we need to do. There's this mob of people that will come and try to shut that down. On social media or whatever, you're a right winger. So I think we have to be prepared for that somehow, because, from what I see, the Democratic Party will put more effort into those kinds of smears than to actually trying to represent the people, because I don't think they have any intention of representing the people. So they want to shut it down. But I think it's really important we have some kind of messaging to combat that, because it's coming.
So two thoughts on this. One is it's given me and plenty of other people who are really into Bitcoin and cryptocurrency a little bit of an ego death when it comes to paper ballots, because that's the thing that's the hardest to fake if you have other people in the room. You can trust a human being that you're watching much better than a machine you're watching, because machines can be hacked and just malfunction. But on the topic of issue coalitions, there's been a lot of controversy over whether or not the Libertarian Party should kind of work with Andrew Yang and the Forward Party on ballot access, specifically in New York. And I've kind of tried to dig a little bit at it and say, okay, why should we not? And what I've started to sort of discover is that I don't see a lot of really passionate, strong ideological alignment on single issue coalitions between us and Andrew Yang. And that's different between us and the Green Party, because libertarians and Greens are both very strongly committed to non-interventionist foreign policy. And so it's we have a genuine thing that we can agree on and cheer each other on with. And when I see other people who might, maybe they're not, but maybe they are opportunistic and just trying to sort of ride our coattails or utilize the work we've built, I'm I don't know, man. I think maybe my alliances need to be built around common ground, not just opportunities. So I appreciate you guys in that respect.
Can I just say too that in this case, the common ground that we're talking about here, overall, I think we need candidates with different ideas, with different goals for foreign policy. In this case, anti-interventionist candidates. So not only with the anti-interventionist candidates, not only you're facing a lot of barriers, not only the political party barriers, but once you get past them, it's the war machine, right?
Yeah.
So they're going to independent candidates, like, they're seen as disruptors to the establishment, but you guys are also disrupting the war machine.
Yeah.
And that machine will go after anyone and anything that might rock their boat. So, but it's been, really encouraging to see all the people rallying around you, Matt. There are a lot, you and Shannon, in terms of anti-interventionists. I spent a lot of time in North Carolina. There's a lot of veterans in North Carolina. There's a lot of Marines in North Carolina, in the part that I go to. So, it's we can't, obviously we can't be discouraged by this, and but we got to keep it in mind.
I just threw this up here as you were saying that. Someone we spoke with recently on Joanne's podcast, Stephen Simler, and he does these great graphs and that are easy to understand. And this is where we align the independent candidates. I mean, people don't want this. Look at this 17 billion back to military contractors. But yeah, that's what we're up against. It's a lot of money. So
yeah.
Well, and that's just the money specifically designated for Ukraine.
Right.
That doesn't include all the F-35s that are now being bought by Finland and Poland, and the tanks being bought by Germany, and the fact that all these NATO countries are now saying they're going to increase, which was the whole goal of NATO expansion all along, right? It was just one big arms sale. And so I think, look, I just read today that in North Carolina, more than 1 in 3 families in North Carolina are single moms with children living under the poverty line, right? And I think we can all, wherever we come from, we look at that and we say that's, not just is not unjust and unfair and immoral, but it also is unsustainable. I mean, like, how can you have a system that is built like that and functioning like that, that is not hurtling towards collapse? And I think, this idea of where we are in the Green Party, where you all are in the Libertarian Party, the idea is that we look at this, we understand the reality of the circumstances. We disagree on why it is this way, and we disagree on the solutions. But again, we're coming to this on a principle-based. We're coming to, and this is what we're trying to create, is issues-based voting, so that we have a system where it is not an identity-based voting, red versus blue. That doesn't really matter because the whole thing is captured by the war machine, Wall Street. Like, I've got a feeling like you guys and I, we share the same opinion on that. What, it's $76 billion they want to give the chip manufacturers. We probably arrive at a different place as to why we oppose it, but we're there, right? I mean, like, in the sense of, like, this is just, so it is. It's that idea of working together because we want to get to a common structure that allows for decision making in this country that's not captured by certain industries or by parts of the government or whoever, and works for the people. And we just have different ideas on what works best for the people. One of the things that, again, I mentioned that support from the Libertarian Party here. So Brian Irving, who is your executive director here in North Carolina for the Libertarian Party, he's part of our brief. He signed a declaration on our behalf. Said, because one of the things that Brian pointed out was, like, he said something like, I've been involved in this stuff for 30 years. I've done 8 petition drives. I've never seen this take place. So clearly establishing that, look, they are targeting the Green Party, and Brian doing it, because he knows that's wrong. And so, again, we're all standing on issues of principle here, and also understanding the threat that we're under is that, hey, if it gets down to it, your ability to vote, if it was up to the Democrats and Republicans, would be simply based on whether or not you have a MSNBC or Fox News subscription. That's where they want to get it to, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Brian brought that petition paper to a Libertarian meeting, and me and a bunch of others signed it, right? So it's important to have ballot access to just pretty much everyone. There's actually 8 people running in this race, Matthew, but their names won't show up because they're all independents. I thought it was going to be a huge fun sled, but it's
well, and they needed, we needed as a party, we needed almost 14,000 signatures. The folks who ran as independents, they needed 83,000 signatures.
Good grief.
Right. And when you do, okay, but only 3 out of 4 signatures count, you're talking about having to collect about 120,000 signatures to get on the ballot. So how do you do that unless you're Mike Bloomberg? So the whole thing is crooked. The whole thing is rigged. And in every state is different. My friend up in Maine, Lisa Savage, she couldn't run as a Green 2 years ago because the threshold in Maine was much higher for parties than it was for independents. So she had to run as an independent. Here in North Carolina, for some reason, the state hates independence more than it hates political parties. But I'm sure, as Shannon has probably seen, all the conversation that's coming out of the state board of elections and some parts of the legislatures. Well, how do we fix this? And what they're going to do is they're going to make ballot access harder under the guise of making it,
easy,
safer for democracy or something.
Yeah, totally. It's a really good opportunity to find common ground. I mean, when you see that price tag for the Ukraine aid, it's what, $17 billion? And then you think about, okay, so gas is $7 a gallon in Southern California. You said what, close to a third of families in North Carolina are near or below the poverty level. Insulin can cost you $1,000 a month if you don't have insurance. And then you look at that Ukraine price tag. I mean, most libertarians are going to look at that, and regardless of how they think people should earn a living, they agree that it's basically like spitting in the face of poor people. That it's just showing absolute contempt for the average and working class American. It's
okay
gross.
for you to be homeless as long as Ukraine isn't.
Yeah, you see, it was maybe 6 months ago, there was someone on MSNBC that basically said, stop complaining, like you can suck it up and pay this extra for,
except, except when you literally can't, when you literally have, if you're already on, you're clipping coupons and buying store brand food and working 2 jobs, and inflation spikes 8 to 9 to 10%, like you're at the end of your rope. And then you see our incompetent, barely there president read some lines poorly off a teleprompter saying he's giving money to people you've never met overseas for a war we shouldn't be involved in. It's insane. We should have a war powers resolution to end U.S. involvement in like every country.
Well, I want to ask, though, I would love to see either one of you win this time around. Do you both, what are your plans for 2024? I mean, Matthew, if you aren't successful in this, do you plan to keep, or have you guys thought that far ahead yet? I'm just curious if, you can be part of this, like, joining forces going forward.
Yeah, I mean, hey, look, right now I fantasize on November 9th getting rid of my smartphone and getting a flip phone and just hanging out in the woods for a long time. So 2020, I don't know. I mean, I have no idea, but we do need to build something, particularly for us on the left to have a workers' party, that we need to build, and we need to build it into part of a larger movement. And, the Green Party here in North Carolina is small. And we are really, I mean, we're digging out the foundation right now. I mean, we need to build the infrastructure in order, because what we find is that it's not just candidates that we need to recruit. We need to get people who can run campaigns, who know how to do FEC and state elections of reporting. I mean, like all those things. People know how to do media. People who can do our social media. All those different things you need to run effective campaigns. And so we're in the process of building that and then connecting it into other parts of the left. And I hate that left-right axis is so inane. Yep. It's Orwellian, right? It has a purpose in prescribing how we think about things, and this is what we run into all the time. But yeah, no, I mean, so building. I don't know if I'll ever be a candidate again, but I certainly would like to build things and have these things that threaten, like Angela was talking about with the healthcare and everything. And again, we obviously have different solutions to it. But one of the things that I've found as people push against me running, and I say, look, I'm running. One of the reasons I'm running is because I have people in my life who have to check their banking account before they go to the doctor. And I earnestly believe that single payer healthcare is the way forward, was what we have to do. And the people who push back on me, the Democrats, and Sherry Beasley, the Democratic nominee, does not. She wants to keep the same healthcare system we have in place. And, the argument against that always seems to come. The argument that somehow healthcare and having someone on the ballot who is representing single payer or universal healthcare is not a good, that almost always comes from somebody who has healthcare, who doesn't have these issues, who does not have these people in their life that they love, who are experiencing that type of suffering, on a variety of levels because of healthcare costs and inability to get healthcare unless you can pay for it, et cetera, et cetera. So, it is a lot of this I find is just people are so far removed from the circumstances. And again, the political establishment wants that. They want to have only people involved who are doing well with the status quo.
Right. Well, we're more and more divided and politically, socioeconomically, and everything. I remember, I think it was the one other time I met you, Angela, on Zoom. We talked, and we're going to, at some future point, talk about healthcare, because what you just said, on the Green Party side, people want Medicare for all. That's the Libertarians have a different solution. But imagine if we had debates of substance like that could get into like, okay, well, let me see your side. What is your solution? And we don't have any of that, because I don't think the establishment on either side wants there to be some kind of solution that works for the people. So yeah, I would love to see those conversations.
I would love to have a conversation about healthcare, like a deep dive where we really go in to it and we say, how can we find a path forward? Like, these are all the libertarian ideas. These are all the Green Party ideas. These are the things at least I want to get rid of, and start looking at, like, what do we agree on is just like garbage. Like, we just got to get rid of this. I feel like that's like a really good way to make progress on that issue. I'm super open to that.
Yeah, and the whole issue of how do you oust corruption in a system that controlled by the corrupt. That's the what seems like an insurmountable problem. And we've got our top tier issues, but I think underlying it all, I think of sort of all good people of goodwill want to do things like that, right? We want options. I want people like you, whether I agree with you on every issue or not. I want you to be able to get out there. I want you to be able to do the debates, to get on the ballots and all that stuff. So, that's why we come together for things like this.
Because this is also how we refine our ideas. It's very profoundly related to free speech. Candidates of all different types should be able to get out there and get on a stage and debate their ideas and find common ground, and then say, no, I don't like that. And that's how you kind of fine tune and hone your positions, and also to really understand your electorate and what people want. And when you get suppressed like this and kicked off the ballot for just like gross, malfeasance on the part of the people running the elections, it's not just the candidate that suffers. It's everybody else who's subjected to the will of these tyrants.
I wish Scott was still here, because about 10 years ago, I was doing his show a lot, and because I was doing anti-war stuff, I was working with Ron Paul and others, and I was working with these libertarians. And in 2012, I voted for Gary Johnson, right? Because Gary Johnson said he was going to end the wars overseas, end the war on drugs, and legalize gay marriage. And the other two guys weren't saying that. And those are three things that were important to me, right? So I'll vote for Gary Johnson, and the and also too, and down here in North Carolina, we couldn't vote for a Green or anyone on the left anyway. So, talking to Scott, these libertarian people, these are principled people. Maybe I should learn more about libertarianism. So Scott gladly recommended me like 3 books to read. And to your point, it kind of refined my position on the left, because I read those books and I said, okay, I understand where they're coming from, but I just don't agree with that. That's just not my perspective. But it made me understand what you were saying, Angela, about this need to have these debates, these need to have these discussions, these need to have this willingness to work together to find, I completely agree with you on the healthcare stuff. Let's get together, and I'm sure we can come up with a lot of stuff that we can together scratch off the list of this has to go, because it's not even academic. This stuff is hurting people. People are dying because of this. And so the urgency of it, absolutely.
Yeah. I'm like 4.5 months pregnant and I don't have health insurance right now, because I'm just like, you know what? It's just it's too expensive. I'd rather pay
Congratulations, Angela.
Oh,
That's
thank
great
you.
news.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine, but it is technically rolling the dice. Like, I'll probably be able to get health insurance when I move out of state. I couldn't just purchase it, by the way. Did you know that's not allowed? I can't just go purchase health insurance.
Get out of here.
Wow.
No, I can't just go buy it. Got to wait for open enrollment.
Oh, yeah, right. Well, I'm not seeing anything like what you guys were discussing, having an actual forum on this and have you guys break this down about healthcare. I think a lot of people would listen to it. There's just nothing out there like that.
Yeah, and it's also part of like humanizing people that you disagree with, which is one of the reasons that I do think it's important to reach across the aisles in an authentic way. Obviously not, hey, we both want to bomb the hell out of the Middle East. Yay, let's work together. The opposite of that. But it's like when you're trying to come up with like a real solution to like a human problem, like, okay, like we're going to disagree on like 25% of it, but you may not know that percentage is so small until you actually come together and start talking about it. And it just makes it so much easier. Then it's like, well, you're disagreeing with like your relatives over Thanksgiving dinner. It's not like someone's your sworn mortal enemy and you're out to, bomb them in a counterinsurgency operation.
Right. Well, Joanne, I think we should schedule that. This sounds like a really great.
Yeah, we got two good candidates for that debate right here. I think
Shannon too. I think Shannon might want to talk more about. I'd love to another time talk with him more about IT stuff.
Yeah, we promised to keep you guys not too long. So what I do want to make sure we get to is so we understand the problem a little bit better. But what do we do to what people watching this? What do we do to help you? Is money the best thing? The best way? What are the ways for people to try to help you solve this problem and how to make things better? What should we do?
For me personally, I have a simple one. I need to raise $50,000 in the next month, and then I can get on the debate stage.
All right.
But that's really they set those boundaries outside to where. To outside where it makes it hard for the smaller candidates without
it's a lot
power to actually get on the stage. But in reality, the biggest thing is it's not really what I'm going to do in this election. It's the damage I'm going to do to everything after this election when we start getting into when you start going in there and really kind of showing the corruption behind the scenes and start showing how blockchain can, show transparency and just kind of I'm going to start steamrolling. Just like I think I'm supposed to. You can't just be quiet and then let everyone just tell you what to do. So.
Yeah, I found it it took me by surprise that you work for Department of Defense still. And I asked you about the time.
I did leave. Trump helped me with that when he furloughed me the third time. I think for 3 months, and I had enough. And then like the next day, I ran for Congress and 2 districts away just because I was pissed. But that's what started it. And I'll run as long as the party asks me to run in my state. I'll do whatever they ask me to do. But ideally, it's more, I'm going to stick the middle finger out to the duopolies is my number one goal.
Well, I feel like on the left, people got really burned with Bernie. They felt the burn because you had so many working class people that couldn't afford it. Jump in and give $5, $50 or whatever. And I
$27.
Yeah, 27, right. Yeah, and then didn't TYT start asking for that, or Justice Democrats or something? Anyway, I think there's a burnout on that, and plus, people can't afford much now, really. But I do think being kind of close just recently, like I said, with Lynn Bernstein's lawsuit stuff going on, and knowing about yours, Matthew, it made me realize okay, if you can explain to people, yes, it does cost money to have attorneys. It does cost money to file things. I think if people understand exactly where it's going and why it's so important and what you need the money for, that just really struck me just in sort of trying to raise some funds that pointing that out, it costs money and they know it, and they hope that you'll just give up and go away. So, I encourage anybody that can, donate.
That's exactly right. And that's one of the goals, right? Is they've got the, in terms of just saying ballot access, you got to get all these signatures getting the ballot. The first part of that is getting those signatures, which is incredibly labor intensive, and we spent the whole campaign. We launched the campaign in January, and ourselves and the North Carolina Green Party spent months getting, and it was our focus of effort. Like, we could really not do much else. All the money we raised had to go towards the petitioning effort, because you can't, I was my first time candidate, and I thought that, all right, we just got to get some volunteers and we'll hand out some clipboards. We'll go to the farmers markets and we'll get those 14,000 signatures, no problem. And then you realize that, well, on a good day, a volunteer is going to get you about 10 signatures an hour.
Yeah.
So do the math and figure out how many, how many hours and hours it's going to take. And then you start understanding that people want to help you. But in order to be effective, we need people coming out for 10, 20, 30 hours a week. And people can't afford to do that. So we have to raise the money to pay our people. And almost all our signature collection was done by, despite what the State Board of Elections says, 95, 96% of our signature collectors, even more than that, were our people, volunteers or paid staff who we were paying $20 an hour to go stand out there for 10, 20, 30 hours a week to get us the signatures we needed. And, so what that does is it means that that's your campaign. You're not out there talking about housing or healthcare or the wars or climate change or anything like that. You're out there doing this. And there are benefits to it because we are talking to people. We are listening. But it's not the way we want to do it. And in the back end, as we turn our signatures in and we get hit with this legal, bureaucratic, administrative, octopus, basically, that strangles us from a bunch of different sides and forces us to run our campaign based upon that. So one of our biggest difficulties right now is making sure that our campaign is not dictated by the Democratic Party. And this is what happens. I go on all these shows and I'm not talking about healthcare. I'm answering, hey, Matt, when did you guys stop committing fraud? So we have to be very strong in our response to that to make sure that we're not following the narrative that's being set for us, because that's part of it. And then, as you've said, it exhausts you. It takes up all your money, and it does. So if people believe in what we're talking about, they can support us. Please do. MatthewHoferSenate.org. Donate. Encourage others to donate, because we need that money in order to make sure that we can pay all the costs of getting on the ballot, which is, ultimately just a horrendous expression of voter suppression. But that's what we're fighting to do. And I think both Shannon and I agree on this, and Angela and Scott as well, that I don't accept the spoiler moniker. I won't accept that, but I'm glad to be called a disruptor. And that's what we have to do, is we have to disrupt the system, put such pressure on it that we break it or that they change it before it breaks. But that's what we have to do. We have to disrupt it.
I would never advocate for people to hire people in the Czech Republic to set up auto dialers and play that message over and over and over again, calling the offices that screwed you over. I would never advocate for that. I would never tell you to pay them in Monero so it's untrackable. But someone else might, and that would be terrible advice. So you should just don't donate to candidates instead. Safer.
Thank you.
See, this is what I love about libertarians. Sometimes, like, the Green Party is just too nice.
I'm not nice. I'm super nice until I've had enough, and then it's gloves off. Gloves off.
Yeah.
And then and on the left, we have to be more like that. You're absolutely right, Kelly. We're not, and be nice. There's that great scene from Roadhouse, right, where Patrick Swayze is telling his bouncers, be nice until I tell you not to be nice. And
yes.
We have the example I keep using for my folks is when we went to our first hearing, I said, I'm remembering the scene from Animal House where they have to go before the student, they have to go to student court.
Yeah.
Right. And I say, like, if this, what happens to us, what happens to the Delta fraternity in the student court, then we're going to wreck their fucking parade. And they did exactly what they did to the Delta House. So that's kind of like our internal thing. Like, we're going to wreck their parade. And, let us win in court. And, then we campaign with this insurgency mindset. and not be nice because they're hurting our people. You know, I mean, that's the thing is they're hurting our people. They're hurting our family, our friends and neighbors so that their donors' profits are secure, you know, and so it just keeps coming back to me. So there's no need to be nice. Absolutely. We have to stop being nice.
How much government money are they spending on this crap?
Oh, I don't
This
know.
is taxpayer money.
I mean, a fortune has already been spent by them to forensically examine our signatures, something that's never been done by the State Board of Elections before.
Insane.
I mean, so again, this is unprecedented. And then how much money so we have 2 attorneys, and one of them was in court last week. And when the Democratic Party filed to intervene to become a co-defendant, he said it was like a movie. He said they come in like 8 lawyers come in their $2,500 suits and their Gucci shoes. He said he felt like he was in a movie, you know, and that's what we're up against here. This Leviathan that has these resources, and it's dual-headed. It's both the party and it's the government that they control. Yeah. And again, not unique here in North Carolina. It's anywhere, you know. I mean, so anywhere throughout the U.S.
That description makes me think of the DNC fraud lawsuit. That's how they described him. They literally said in court, we can just pick candidates in a smoke-filled back room or something, was the line they said. So, it's...
I mean,
2016.
My philosophy on that would be whatever you had to pay all of your signature gatherers, to pay all of your staff, and then the filing fees and everything you have to pay to fight this lawsuit, I would try to make the Democratic Party, I would try to bleed them 3 times that amount. I would paper them to death in lawsuits. I would make it hurt. I would file every injunction. I would leave no stone, just to like, you frustrated me. Like, I want to make your life a living hell. I think that I think the Green Party and the Libertarian Party are going to have a really good lobbying opportunity for ballot access after this. There is a little bit of a silver lining because people are going to feel really grossed out. And there are going to be a handful of people in political positions of power who are going to try to do things to make themselves feel better and make themselves look better to the public. So I would capitalize on that. But man,
one thing I about gathering signatures, I thought about this during the pandemic, is why can't we do DocuSign? I mean, you're out, and during the pandemic, people are out trying to gather signatures, like at the grocery store. It's
6 feet, ma'am.
Yeah,
6
right.
feet.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know how you would.
Other
verify.
states have done that. Maryland changed. Maryland changed theirs so that you could use electronic. I mean, it's just, well, and then it gets to the whole point, right, of like kind of what we were briefly spoken about before, is that we've got to go out there and get signatures to be on the ballot, pen on paper. But then when we vote on these paperless machines that you can't, right? You know, I mean, it's kind of, you know, the same thing too. It's like only people who could vote for me could sign a petition for me, but anybody can give me money. You know what I mean? The whole structure is there's no principle behind it.
It's almost like it's designed to set you up for failure.
Almost.
Amazingly so. Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll put all the relevant links in the show notes. It was great pulling everybody together, and kudos to you for working together. You know, long live Common Ground, and thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, this was great. Guys. I wish Scott could have stayed longer, but great to have him on too.
Yeah. Well, we'll just go catch him on Kennedy real quick.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening. A special thanks to Shannon Bray, Matthew Ho, Scott Horton, Angela McArdle, and to Kelly Lane for co-hosting. You can follow Shannon on Twitter at ShannonBrayNC. Follow Matthew Ho on Twitter at Matthew P. Ho. Follow Scott Horton at Scott Horton Show. Follow Angela at Angela for LNC Chair. Follow Kelly at Kelly's Words. Follow me at Joanne Leon. And Around the Empire at Around the Empire. This is a fully independent podcast. And in this age of, well, it's just a mess for independent media. Very difficult, more difficult every day. So your support's more important than ever. Go to the website aroundtheempire.com to find the various ways that you can get access to bonus content and support the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, leave reviews. All those things help with ranking and visibility. Follow on Twitter at Around the Empire. Join us on Telegram, t.me/AroundTheEmpire. And we'll see you next time. Take good care, everybody. Hang in there.